The Philadelphia 76ers have received some really positive news surrounding the outlook for Joel Embiid, and that dictates a great deal of the future of this season. So much of this year for the Sixers we've discussed in the context of if Joel Embiid will be back, what the outlook is, where the team could be, and finally the light seems to be at the end of his tunnel with his return inching closer. So in this video, I want to dive into specifically what was said by Nick Nurse, the latest updates, how I think this impacts the Sixers moving forward, and why I might have a little more optimism than most when looking at the playoff seedings. So I want to jump in and talk a bit about Joel Embiid specifically and start with a couple quotes from Nick Nurse here. Talking to reporters pregame, that he mentioned that Joel Embiid has entered the, quote, ramp-up phase as the reigning MVP has been doing on-court work, quote, almost every day. Quote, he is on the court. I don't want to say daily, but almost every day now when he's on the court doing basketball things. All the checkups have been positive. And again, the Sixers are being a little vague here as far as what exactly basketball activities are. I did watch the full clip by Nick Nurse, and he kind of spoke more vaguely about kind of the ramp-up process, what that includes, things like going from 1-on-1 to 3-on-3 to 5-on-5, starting with non-contact, building in some gradual contact until you're at full game speed. Didn't really fully indicate what stage of the process that Joel Embiid is at this point in the game, but it is still encouraging that there is a plan and that he is in the process of going down that. We have another update here that I want to jump into, and it's saying, quote, Joel Embiid is on the court. I don't want to say daily, but almost every day now where he's on the court doing basketball things. All the checkups have been positive. He's kind of in the ramp-up phase now. Like, what can he handle? When can he start having contact? And when can he start playing 1-on-1? When can he start playing 5-on-5? When can he really go through a practice with contact? And then we'll be really close. We'll be really close, Nick Nurse told reporters pregame. So that's kind of the quote that I was talking about there, him kind of taking us through the steps. I like that there's a game plan in place. I would love to know what part of that game plan Joel Embiid is currently in. But the bottom line is this is great news that these are the conversations now being had. It feels less about if Joel Embiid will come back and more about when he will step back on the floor, which is a huge change from the Sixers' perspective. And I did want to take a little bit of a look at the timeline. I've seen some criticism in both directions for people critiquing the Sixers, saying they are rushing Joel Embiid back, as well as people kind of concerned and saying this is too soon. So I did want to jump into this specifically here. And this coming from Sixers Galaxy, who, by the way, is an awesome Twitter follower here. He's saying that Shams reported on Friday, this coming a couple days ago, back on March 12th, so about 2 weeks at this point, saying Shams reported in February that Joel Embiid would most likely be out 6 to 8 weeks. We're at exactly 5 weeks prior to Embiid's procedure. So at today's date, he is past the 6-week period of time, that being the short end of when his expected return would come. So to look further into this, the date of surgery was February 6th. Today, at the point of recording, now being March 22nd, so him past the 6 weeks out period, almost to the 7 weeks out, and that April 2nd date would be exactly 8 weeks. Some of the notable dates that are worth highlighting here: the final regular season game occurring on April 14th, the play-in April 16th to 19th, and the playoffs on April 20th. The bottom line is this spells that Joel Embiid will be back this season. Now, it is not perfect, the team without him. That's been quite clear, and anyone who was in the trade Joel Embiid conversations, I invite you to just rewatch what has been going down the past couple games, because it has been tough to swallow. But for this team, you can see the bones of it there. And that is why I do have a little bit more optimism than both. And I know that standing is going to be the number one thing that people throw as a critique, as a concern, and a reason for why this team will not make a deep playoff run. And to address that directly, the Sixers have slipped back to the 8th seed with their 38-31 record after that loss to the Suns in their previous game. Them sitting a little bit back, they are currently tied with the Heat with the same record, who hold the 7th seed. The Pacers a half game ahead for that 6th seed. That 6th seed, of course, would get them out of the play-in tournament, which is something that I think is very appealing and would love to see happen. But the bottom line is this is still a tight race. It's now kind of between the Pacers, Heat, and Sixers for who can snag that 6th seed, although I would not rule out teams like the Knicks or Magic cooling off and falling down the standings a little bit in this last stretch of games. But for this Sixers team, and has always been the case during the Joel Embiid era, it is far more about them than any team that they have to play against. That these Sixers, we've seen time and time again, unfortunately beat themselves, whether that be coming up short in the biggest moments, whether it be passing up open dunks when Trae Young's on you, whether it is poor coaching decisions, just coming up small in the biggest moments and not being able to step to center stage. It has been the Sixers' own self-inflicted wounds that have shot them in the foot during these playoff opportunities. And a great deal of reason for that has been the health of Joel Embiid, that we have yet to see this guy at full strength on the biggest stage. And that, it looks like, presenting itself a chance this year. That, again, this is the half glass full, very optimistic lens that I'm viewing this, but the perfect way to get Joel Embiid on a healthy playoff run may very well be him getting hurt exactly when he did. Now, there has to be a point or a period of time in which he kicks off the rust, gets back to himself, but I also would like to give Joel a little bit of credit that I think for the most part, he's been a guy who has come in and out of the lineup and in and out of off the floor in a way that it doesn't drop his level as much as it does some guys. That oftentimes you see players need a ramp-up period, need to be able to find their stride, kick some rust off. Joel has been pretty excellent at being able to step back on center court and play like the MVP caliber player that he is capable of being. Now, I think a great deal of the concern, and I can speak to myself that I've had some frustrations with this, it is the roster around him. That the Sixers overall were fairly quiet at the trade deadline, Buddy Hield being the biggest acquisition. And by the way, Buddy Hield has struggled quite a bit since the All-Star break. That looking especially sharp in the first 4 games since coming to Philadelphia, and it's been downhill from there. Buddy Hield specifically played the fewest minutes of any of the regular rotation players in that Phoenix Suns game. That, to me, is a concern, and a little bit of Nick Nurse losing some trust in him. Ultimately, I'm not going to judge Buddy Hield until I see him share the floor with Joel Embiid. That the entire idea and goal behind that type of move is to surround Joel with another offensive weapon. When you think about the most efficient versions of offense that the Sixers team has had, it is always the 2-man game with Joel Embiid, with a guy that is a electric and elite three-point shooter. We've seen it with Seth Curry. We've seen it with JJ Redick. And I'm still willing to go as far to say that I think Buddy Hield is a better overall basketball player than either one of these guys. That you still see the flashes of him attacking off the dribble, the movement shooting that he can do, the way that he constantly is just in motion throughout the games. I think it's going to fit hand in glove when Joel Embiid is back on the floor. But when looking at the rest of the team, there are some concerns behind it. So to pull the Sixers depth chart up here, the team that has currently been starting has been Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, and Mo Bamba. Obviously a massive upgrade when Joel Embiid steps in and drops Mo Bamba to the bench, and likely drops Mo Bamba out of the rotation entirely. And I will give Bamba a little bit of shout out. I've been pretty harsh on him and been pretty underwhelmed with what he's brought to the team as a whole, but he's been giving this Sixers team some really solid minutes of late and done well in the starting roster. So little hat tip to him. Good job kind of hanging in there as the team has needed it. Also, shout out to Kelly Oubre, who's been playing some terrific basketball. And as I always say, with kind of taking the bad with the good with Kelly Oubre, that you know you're going to get some heat checks, some poor shot selection, but the guy competes, man, and he brings it on a night-to-night basis and has been the best player on the Sixers in several instances. It was the case in that Phoenix Suns game, that being the worst Tyrese Maxey game that we've seen in several months to this point, but Kelly just continues to bring it, and I am appreciative of that. But when you look at this depth chart and start to carve out a playoff rotation, there are guys here. And think about a rotation of Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, Kelly Oubre, Tobias Harris, Nico Batum, Buddy Hield, even a guy, Paul Reed, I think likely cracks it, and even a guy like Robert Covington, we have not brought up a ton. That's 9 guys right there, not including Joel Embiid. I don't even think all those players touch the floor come playoff time when the rotation are crunched, but that is a more competitive and a more cohesive unit than the Sixers have had in years past. What I think is especially appealing about that is it does feel like each of these guys are equipped to maximize Joel Embiid. A guy like Kyle Lowry, you can see the energy and excitement of Joel when Kyle does stuff. There was a moment against the Heat the other night where Kyle Lowry gets a fast break opportunity, basically waits up for the Heat player that had fallen on the floor and kind of jumps over him, finishes, gets the and one, and still draws the foul. And it was one of those plays that when you're playing against that type of player is incredibly annoying. But when you do see it in a Sixers uniform, you appreciate the winning tendencies and the way that it does impact the team. So I do think that Kyle Lowry has far more in the tank than I gave him credit, and I think he's going to be a legitimate 30-minute per game guy come playoffs. I brought up Buddy Hield already. DeAnthony Melton's still a huge question mark as far as his health, and frankly, I'm more pessimistic about his potential return than I am with Joel. But there are pieces to this team. Kelly Oubre is another guy that I think when we shrink him to a little more minimized role than is currently the case, he can impact winning at a high level, higher than he's been given the opportunity to throughout his career thus far. So you can see the bones of it. And again, it all falls on the shoulders of Joel Embiid. That as much as I don't want to critique this guy for the shortcomings that he's had come playoff time, the bottom line is he has not had this moment where he leads the team on a run the way you expect your superstars to. Well, if you want it to be done, this could be the year to do it. And I do believe in the mindset of bringing him back because there is such limited time that you have with these level of superstars, especially when there are the injury concerns that are the case with Joel Embiid. Because he is eligible to play, because he is going to be healthy enough to return to the floor, why not see if there's a run in those legs for this season? Why not see what this team can do, or at least evaluate which of these players you want to keep and which you want to move on from as you build a hopefully long-term championship contender during this offseason with all the cap space that these Sixers have preserved. So I'm feeling excited about this Sixers team at the moment. I'm feeling optimistic that we will see Joel Embiid back on the floor sooner rather than later, and I'm thrilled to see what exactly that looks like. So hopefully there will be some more concrete updates as far as when specifically they're targeting a return. That April 2nd date is a matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder at home in Philadelphia. That would be exactly 8 weeks post-surgery, so maybe that will be the date, but we'll see if we get anything from these Sixers and from there. Appreciate all you guys for tuning in. Make sure to drop a like on this video, drop your comments on your thoughts, and make sure you're subscribing to keep this Sixers Digest family growing. Appreciate all you guys, and talk to you next time. Peace.